I got my real estate license in less than 12 months, and now I've helped over 500 to 600 people get theirs, but everybody's story is different. And so in this video, I want to go through my story, and hopefully you can take some lessons out of it and get your license as soon as possible. Okay, so I essentially started going after and trying to do my license in August 2020, and about a year later, so August 2021, I was licensed. So it took me about a year to get my license, but I took a lot of breaks in the middle. And as you guys might have seen on some other videos on my channel, a lot of the courses I completed really, really fast. So I would complete C1 in 5 days, C4 in 12 days. And so they didn't really take me too long, but I really just had to find some time, a week or two, where I was like fully available to do them. And now I would just go full in and just commit to them. And I would take like a break and some months in between. And this was also because I was doing school and university at the same time. So it was obviously not the easiest to kind of balance both things. And that proved to be a little bit challenging because I would be, doing schooling and I would need to, focus on this at the same time. So obviously this is very similar to a lot of people's journeys. They have jobs and part-time and full-time jobs and tons of different commitments. And so that obviously makes it harder. So I don't want you guys to feel like as much as doing the courses faster is great and getting in the field faster is great as well, it's not at all necessary. And really you just want to set your own goals and set your own timeline. But that's essentially as long as it took me. Now, the reason I got into real estate was I had a lot of influences around me, friends and family who kind of were pushing me to go into the industry. They kept reminding me of how good of an industry it is. And, especially being young as I am, they were telling me it's a good option. Like, even if I wanted to, get a degree at university and get a job separately, it's always good to have this on the side because even when you sell your own house, it was useful. And so I took their advice and I went after getting my real estate license. And honestly, it was really to a huge part thanks to them and some of the influences around me that really kept me on track. I know firsthand after helping so many people get their license, how hard it is to stay committed for this because it is a really, really long process in Ontario to get your license. It's not the same in other provinces, but in Ontario it can be really difficult. So just the fact that I had somebody around me who was always checking in on me, just saying, hey, did you finish your license? What course are you on? What was your score? And were you studying? And that was so, so helpful for me. And that really kept me on track because especially when, you start the course with high motivation and then you start studying and then you lose motivation slowly, having someone constantly remind you why you started in the first place and how lucrative it is to get your license, that was really, really helpful. So I even recommend for anybody watching this video, if you can really find that one person, a buddy or somebody with you who can, you can do the journey with together, where you guys can motivate each other, or if you know somebody who can motivate you and kind of keep track and keep tabs on you, accountability partners are so, so helpful to accomplish anything, but especially this course being as long as it is. Okay, so I want to dive into my experience with Humber because I actually never really shared it on this channel. But it's probably very similar to a lot of other people doing this course. But if you're new to this, then this will be very helpful. I essentially completed all my courses on the first try, except for C3. So course 3, I failed one time, I had to retake it, and then I passed. The rest of them I did pretty well. And like I said, you guys can see the other videos on the channel. C1 took me a few days, C4 took me about 12 days. So they were very simple for the most part. I still think the hardest course was course 3, just because of the need to remember so many details, which is not really necessary for the other courses, just because course 2 is really long, but if you can cipher through the information, it's not as hard as C3, where C3, the exam can be very difficult. Even if you know your stuff, you really, really got to know them above and beyond. So that was the hardest for me. The simulations by far are the easiest, and I think it is kind of mostly the easiest for most people, just because you're in a classroom and you're kind of reviewing stuff you've already done. And I think the simulations, which are honestly a new thing they've only put in for the last few years, I think it was put into place more so just to get a real life idea of how things work, like the contracts and, introducing yourself as a realtor and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of stuff that we did in simulations, which honestly was not on the exam, but that you would use in real life. So a large part of it, I think, was more so just for the experience for realtors, which is why the exams are relatively easy. With that being said, when I was doing my Humber courses, for one, I found that all the Humber courses were very long, very repetitive, very boring. There's tons of things that now I know that I didn't need to study, not only for the exam, but for real life. And also just keep in mind, if you are watching this, whether you know the courses really well, whether you pass with high marks or you just barely skim by, it has no bearing on your quality as a realtor once you get licensed. I can guarantee you that there are people who have barely skimmed by the courses, who I've tutored, who have been amazing realtors and have done great on the field. And I've seen the opposite as well. I've seen people that have done really great on the courses, but they get licensed and they're not able to really do the things necessary. So it's really just a stepping stone to get your license, and after that, you're totally your own master. But with that being said, when I was studying for these courses, given how long they were, I actually started taking notes on most of the courses. And so if you guys go on my website, that's where you're going to see some of the notes I've taken. And I used to take notes just like I was studying in university or high school, and I would take notes on all the different modules. I went through all the Humber slides, and I actually was not aware of any other tools at the time. So there was no Facebook groups actually until later. So I didn't use any Facebook groups. I didn't use any other tools like Passit or Minigram, and I didn't have anybody else's notes either. So I actually had to just go through the Humber slides, study from the slides, make my own notes, condense them, and study off of those notes. So I know nowadays there's tons of tools that people use, but I did it very dry and raw. And still, even doing that, I was able to pass them within a few days. Honestly, looking back, I'm still pretty shocked at myself how I was able to do that. But it was pretty raw and it took a lot of time for sure. With that being said, obviously there's a lot more things that you can do now, a lot better methods to study now. But I do think that one of the reasons why I passed so fast was because I didn't cut corners. I think a lot of these tools, they do cut corners. That's the idea, right? Hey, we're gonna narrow this material down for you so you don't need to study everything. And as great as that sounds, if you don't have someone who can really guide you properly, or the tool is not really made properly for the course, you might be missing information that you need. And it actually ends up being a little bit more work because you use this tool to cut down information for you, but you actually got to double check stuff with another tool, or you got to review some of the notes. And then it ends up being a little bit more work than you anticipated. Because of the fact that I didn't have anything else, I really committed to just using those Humber slides, which obviously was a lot of effort and focus, but being able to just go through the raw material, I didn't have to second guess myself. And obviously, like now when I teach people, I can tell them pretty much what kind of things they need to know and what they don't. That would have been so helpful when I did my exams. But now I got the checklist and the notes out for free. So if you guys don't already know, you guys can check that out on the website. I have tons of checklists and notes for free, which basically list, the notes are the summary. Those are the ones I've made, which are summary for the entire course. But the checklist, those are basically all the most important parts that very likely we'll see on the exam. So, that is something I wish I had. But now you guys could have it. So, it's definitely going to be something that can help you kind of get licensed faster. So if I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, I just want to say that the Humber experience was not amazing, but it didn't define me as an agent. I knew that. And I completed the courses mostly pretty fast. I just used my own notes and the Humber slides. But, I was able to get through them. I took a lot of breaks in the middle, which I probably would not advise to do. I have other videos on the channel about tips on that, but try to take the courses as soon as possible because you can really build on the knowledge. What I ended up doing is I would take breaks and then I would have to review the previous course, which obviously, is not the best or most efficient method. So I would recommend you take little breaks and you really stay consistent. Consistency is probably the most important thing if you want to get licensed fast. Okay, now I did eventually get licensed in 2021 of August, and then I started actually doing the real estate properly. So I was like, okay, I'm a realtor, let's get into the field. So I found a brokerage, and this was a brokerage that was referred to me from one of my friends. So I pretty much knew that this was the one I was going to join. For most of you guys out there, you're going to want to do some interviews, and I'm going to have a video on the channel going through those interviews and stuff. But you want to make sure you interview a bunch of brokerages, get referrals, get references, and really ask the right questions to the brokers. But that being said, I joined a brokerage, and I decided that I wanted to really give it a shot, see if this was something for me, and see what it's like, because obviously you're very nervous as a new realtor. You don't really know the business. You're dealing with clients' purchases and sales of a home, which nowadays is the biggest thing that you can really purchase in your life. People save up for a lifetime to do this. And so for somebody to trust you with that kind of money, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. So that being said, I really wanted to make sure I was doing it right. Good thing is that the brokerage I was at, I had a good mentor, which was awesome. So I definitely recommend getting somebody who can guide you. But ultimately, you're going to have to do everything yourself, right? They can guide you and tell you what to do, but you're going to have to do it. And now I'm way more comfortable than I used to be. But back when I started, I wanted to kind of put myself in as much discomfort as possible so I can get through it as soon as possible, and I could become comfortable seeing, and talking to random strangers, right? So initially what I did was I decided to door knock. So it was, I think it's potentially an outdated method, and there might be better ways now, but it is super helpful to help you face your fears because you're facing clients directly. So what I did was I would, set a goal of how many houses I had to door knock. And what I actually did was I would just go out and I would try to do, 30, 40, 50 houses. And I would just set a goal, and then I would go and I would try to do those houses. Then when I got a bit more serious about it, so within a week or two, I was like, okay, let's kind of make a plan about this. So I actually decided to kind of break down the whole numbers. And I would actually go into all the details about, okay, how many seconds relatively does it take me to walk from one door to the next? Because you kind of got to walk down the driveway, on the sidewalk, up the lawn, right? So that takes a lot of time actually when you're door knocking. And at the door itself, you usually have to wait at least 10, 15 seconds, sometimes more. And then if they don't answer, then you got to go. So I kind of calculated how much time it would take me. And then based on that, I decided, okay, how much percentage of these door knockers actually open, and how many of them would I actually get information from, right? So after doing about 100 houses, I had a good I thought it was a decent sample size to make this kind of assumptions based off of. What I found was actually based on 100 doors that I would knock, you might have something like, actually a good amount of them opened. I would say probably about a 50% open rate, maybe a little bit less or a bit more, but a lot of people would open the doors. Now, out of the 100, out of the 50 people that opened the door, out of those, the amount of people that would give you information, basically being like, hey, call me in a few months, or yeah, I'm planning to sell, in a few weeks, like those kind of people who are leads, that would be maybe about 5 or less out of the entire 100, right? 100 people, 50 open, and out of those 50 that open, 5 people gave me information. So off of those numbers, I extrapolated it and I decided, okay, if I wanted to do let's say a deal a month, how many houses would it take me? And I think based on the math, I kind of decided to do about 30 houses a day or 50 houses a day. That was something that was manageable. And I went at it. And I really kind of focused on just facing your fears, and you really got to hype yourself in the car and make sure that you're ready. And you go in, you knock on the door, and then they answer. And then you just kind of get better at doing your script. You get better at your body language. You be more relaxed. And people slamming your face, the door in your face, or yelling at you, or being angry is very rare. And a lot of times it's not directed at you. You're a blimp in their day. They see you one time and then they forget about you the next. So honestly, people care way less about you than you might imagine. So do not be scared about that. I never faced it, and I door knocked a few hundred houses. It doesn't happen nearly as often as people might imagine. And of course, you're always going to be nervous, and you are, imposing on someone's day. You're breaking them up in whatever activity they were doing at their house. So obviously you want to be respectful and you want to acknowledge that. But with that being said, whoever is going to go out and hunt is going to get the food. So if you're the one who's, if you want business, you're going to have to go out and get some sort of business somewhere. So just to sum it up, personally, door knocking was a very good learning experience. And I think it's a great way to start off as a new agent, not for the potential to get many leads, but for the ability to develop so many skills, especially a bit of shoulder shrug, a bit of ability to say, hey, that didn't matter actually. It's not that serious. That helped a ton. So I highly recommend that. Okay, just to go into my first few weeks a little bit deeper. So obviously door knocking was huge, but a little bit deeper into that, the first few weeks really, and they advise us to everybody, all new agents, it's about tapping into your circle of influence, which is essentially the people that that you have their contacts of. So looking at your contacts, looking at your Facebook, your WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever you have, tons of people and you've met tons of people. And, one of the exercises we did on my brokerage was my broker would be like, hey, how many contacts do you have in your phone? And then I checked my phone. I was like, oh, I think 200 or something. And he was like, okay, start there. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, call up all of those people. And then if they don't pick up, send them a message and tell them you're a realtor. And then I was like, and I looked at the contacts And some of them are people I haven't talked to in a while. Some of them are people I probably don't want to talk to. And I was nervous. I didn't want to tell everybody. But this is where he mentioned, like, hey, if you want to be a realtor, the easiest deals you're going to get, and often the most consistent, is from friends and family. So basically, strangers, cold leads, is the hardest. So if you already have someone who knows you, it's a great starting point. And chances are you might find 1 or 2 people out of those 200 who are already willing to sell, and they know you. So they will very likely choose you over anybody else. So that's where I started, and that's where I would recommend most people start. You start with your circle of influence, and then you branch out from there, and eventually once you get a deal, you start getting referrals, and there's tons of different strategies you can do. But I would advise, if you're a new agent, keeping your ads spend or spending money on advertisements, keeping that at a low initially, because chances are you haven't even refined the skills necessary to close those leads you might get. So these tools, even if you pay for them, like paying for ads, it will give you leads, but are you able to close them? And I don't want you guys to imagine, hey, like if I get 10 leads, I could probably close at least 1 or 2. We don't want to do that. That's a waste of money. Personally, that's what I imagine. I would want you guys to really focus on, okay, how do I close leads? How do I close deals? What are the skills I need to learn, right? Then when your closing rate is higher, around 4 or 5, then spend the money, because that investment is going to bring you back so much more results, right? That's why I would really recommend organic initially. It's slower, right? It allows you to kind of build your clientele slowly, learn your skills slowly so you're not super pressured. And as you build, then you start spending money. And by then, you're going to obviously learn from that experience too, but you're going to increase your closing rates. And the closing rates is what's important. Tons of brokerages give you leads. Tons of companies give you leads. But a lot of times they'll be dead or stale leads. And if they are good leads, you might not have the skill to close it initially. But you can learn. And that is the idea. So circle of influence, super, super important. And then aside from that, social media. And that's what I did for I think the first kind of 2-3 months or so. I just wanted to test what it would be like and how I felt kind of doing it. And so I started making videos about like a day in the life and some tips and TikToks and IG and stuff. And you guys can check out the links below as well. But yeah, it was fun at the time, and it's helpful. It does bring in clients. It does bring in leads, especially if you do consistently over time. Because the great thing about social media is a lot of these things will compound. YouTube compounds so much more than any other platform, because you post a video on YouTube and people will check out that video, and they might check out also a video from a year ago. And as long as you're an active YouTuber, YouTube will recommend active users to other people, even old videos. So it can be very, very powerful with YouTube. You really maximize that evergreen content. With Instagram or Facebook, a little bit different. You do have to be more consistent. Almost every day you have to be posting to be out there in people's faces. And your old videos are not necessarily going to get promoted to new people. So it's a bit harder on those platforms to grow. But it is really good if you're getting your face out, especially with videos. And I highly recommend, if you're a new agent, don't be nervous. People don't care about you as much as you think. Like once, some friends saw me, like I never even got a message from any of them, you know what I mean? Like, or some people that I knew that I thought would really, I was scared of just kind of post these online. It honestly doesn't matter. So once you post, you're going to realize it's honestly just you versus you. So you post these videos, you're going to get traction. And if you like it, stay consistent with it. And so the thing with social media is that it demands a lot of effort and also a lot of your ability just to deal with the discomfort and learning new things. And it's a huge thing, right? Because you're dealing with all these things at the same time. You're learning the platform, you're learning the job, you're dealing with discomfort at, doing these new things and feeling like you're, not like you don't know enough. And at the same time, you got to be consistent, right? Because consistency is what will help you get through those first 2 blocks, and it will yield you better results as you go on. So it can be very stressful initially. But at least for me, I find after a month or 2, after giving it a really good attempt, and I posted numerous videos, I decided that, the fast social media part of it, it wasn't for me. It's just a lot of effort, and you really got to be on it daily. And I found I was actually getting super stressed. I would always check like how the videos are doing, and I don't think it was a kind of healthy kind of relationship I had at the time. And I was also still in school at the time, right? So I was still doing other stuff with huge commitments, like full-time student. So definitely want to see what is capable for you and what you are able to do with the time you've given, right? Really decide early on, how much time do you have to give to this and how much effort are you willing to sacrifice, right? If we imagine that you have 100 units of energy, right? So you have 100% of energy at the beginning of the week. And in the week, you can devote that percent to anywhere you want. Let's imagine 20% gets devoted to general stuff, right? Eating and sleeping and waking up and whatever, talking with people. You have a good amount of energy which you can devote elsewhere. A good 30% might get devoted towards work, but you do have a lot of other time which you can devote where you want. And some things will demand more effort than others. And if you want to get a deal in your first month as a realtor, it's going to demand maybe 80% of your effort. But if you want to, if you only have 20% effort to give, then you want to be realistic and, just allow the deal to come when it comes. But be realistic and know that it might come in a few months. So that was kind of my journey, at least with social media. And then over time, I actually found that, as I created a Facebook group to help people and people started using the notes, they started asking me for help as private sessions and tutoring. And then I started doing group sessions and classes. I learned over time, that I really enjoyed the teaching part. So now, they're kind of both side by side, the real estate and the teaching, and it's been really fun on both sides. And there's no right answer. Everybody's going to be very different. So you really want to see if this is something for you. You might imagine real estate is for you, and once you get in, you might not even like it. Or vice versa. You might not like real estate now, but keep it in your back pocket, get your license, and you might find out it's the field for you. So with all that being said, just to kind of cap the journey, going through Humber, getting my license, doing door knocking, going on social media, doing videos, now teaching mostly and also doing the real estate part-time. So with all that being said, I want to end it off with a little bit of advice, and I just want to give you guys 3 points. One is getting licensed quickly means nothing if you don't follow up and work. So a lot of people I know have gotten licensed very quick in 6 months or 4 months, but they stop doing real estate, or they actually don't even start because of their job or because of time or effort or fear. And you might be watching this and this might be you as well. But again, don't be so worried about getting through this journey as fast as possible, because you have another journey after that and another journey after that and another and another and another. So everybody will get through it in their own time. But understand that it does not matter when you get through the courses if you're not going to work after. You got to commit to both, and that will yield you better results. Second, avoid as much self-doubt as possible. Self-doubt is the killer of success. There's no room for self-doubt. You got to kill that thing every single day, because self-doubt, all it does is makes you doubt yourself and worry about things that are outside of your control, right? And I'm not saying that it's not natural. It's totally natural, but it's the people who are able to do things despite that self-doubt or despite that fear that are usually the most successful. It's not getting rid of it. It's doing it despite it or in spite of it. Okay, so make sure that you can really just train yourself to sit with it. And if you feel fearful, that's okay. Take a few deep breaths and then go and knock another 10 doors. And the last point I want to say, number 3, is that you want to, as much as possible, fail faster. One of the quotes I love, which to this day has stuck with me, it's how fast would you fail if you knew you were only 10 fails away from success, right? Or how fast would you fail if you knew you were only 100 fails away from success? You knew for sure you're going to become a millionaire after 100 fails. How fast would you fail, right? And it might not be 100. It might only be 10. It might be 5. It might be 1. It might be 60. We don't know. But the idea is that, with every single fail, you actually get a step up, right? Every fail is not really a fail. It's actually progress, because you learn things each time. And you learn more from failure than you would from success. So being able to do that consistently, failing over time and learning, that gets you to success way, way faster than someone who's just trying to make the perfect thing initially and trying to plan it out, right? Doers are always going to beat the thinkers, unless the thinkers become the doers. So keep that in mind. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you resonate with the story. Please drop your comments below if you got a similar story to share. I would love to hear some of your guys' comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. See you then.